The applause inside the Velkari High Council chamber did not mean safety. Marcus understood that. Velkari claws striking scales was a sign of approval, but approval did not erase hatred. As he carried Sophie Chen out of the chamber, he could feel thousands of eyes on them. Some respectful, some curious, some angry. The Blade Father who had come to Earth stood near the exit. His scarred face revealed nothing. "You have won the right of naming," he said quietly. "But you have not erased her blood." Marcus met his gaze. "She's 4 years old. And she carries the blood of a traitor. She carries my name now." The Blade Father's eyes narrowed. "Names can be stripped." "Not by humans," Marcus replied. That was the moment the tension shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. Because for the first time, a human had spoken to a Velkari war leader as an equal, not as a negotiator, not as a diplomat, but as a father. 3 days later, Marcus and Sophie were still on Velka Prime when the attack happened. It was not a public attack. It was quiet, planned. Marcus was in the guest quarters provided by the council when the lights flickered. Sophie was asleep beside him, curled up in the warmth she needed. Then the window exploded inward. 3 masked Velkari warriors entered the room. No insignia. No honor markings. Rogues. "Take the child," one hissed. Marcus moved before thinking. He grabbed the bedside lamp and swung it like a club. It shattered against scales, buying him seconds. Seconds were enough. "Run," he shouted. Sophie did not freeze. She did not scream. She moved. Velkari children were raised with survival instincts. She darted toward the side corridor. One rogue lunged for her. Marcus threw himself into the warrior. The impact knocked the air from his lungs. He was human. Softer. Slower. But he did not stop. He bit. He clawed. He fought like something feral. One blade slashed across his side. Pain exploded through him. But he did not let go. Because fathers do not let go. Sophie reached the emergency alarm panel. She slammed it with both small hands. The entire compound lit up in red. Security forces stormed in seconds later. The rogues retreated. Not captured. Not killed. Gone. Marcus collapsed to his knees. Sophie ran back to him. "You're bleeding," she whispered, shaking. "I've had worse," he lied. He had not. The real problem. The attack forced the High Council to confront something they had hoped to ignore. There were factions inside Velkari society that did not accept the ruling. They believed Sophie's existence dishonored ancient bloodlines. And they believed humans had no right to interfere. The High Adjudicator summoned Marcus again. "This was not sanctioned," she said coldly. "But it was predictable." "She's a child," Marcus replied. "She is a symbol. And you're letting extremists turn her into one." The chamber fell quiet. "You think this is about one child?" Marcus continued. "It's not. It's about your future." The council members shifted. "Explain." "You trade with humans because we innovate. Because we grow. Because we adapt." He stepped forward. "But your society punishes children for blood they didn't spill." Silence. That kind of culture doesn't survive contact with the wider galaxy. The words were dangerous. Brutally honest. Very human. "You dare judge us?" a counselor snapped. "No," Marcus said calmly. "I'm warning you." Sophie stood beside him, holding his hand. "She's Velkari," Marcus continued. "And she's human. Whether you like it or not." The High Adjudicator studied them. "For now, she will remain under council protection until transport back to Earth." It was not kindness. It was strategy. But it was enough. A quiet conversation. That night, Sophie sat beside Marcus on a balcony overlooking the crimson-lit city. "Am I bad?" she asked softly. The question hit harder than any blade. "No. They said my father hurt many people." Marcus chose his words carefully. "Your father made choices. You did not. Will they always hate me?" "Some will," he said honestly. She lowered her head. But some will see you, he continued. And they'll see something new. She looked up. What? A bridge. Sophie tilted her head. Like the ones over rivers. Exactly. And what if bridges break? Then we build stronger ones. She leaned against him. I'm glad you found me. Marcus swallowed hard. I'm glad you were brave enough to trust me. Earth responds. When news of the assassination attempt reached Earth, everything changed. Public opinion exploded. Humans did not tolerate attacks on children. Especially not adopted children. The Earth Council formally recognized Sophie Chen as a full human citizen under protected status. Trade talks with Velka Prime were paused. Military escorts were offered for transport. Velkari leadership realized something uncomfortable. One human father had just shifted interstellar politics. Not through power. Not through force. Through stubborn love. Departure. The day they left Velka Prime, crowds gathered. Some watched silently. Some turned their backs. But something unexpected happened. A group of Velkari civilians stepped forward. Parents. Holding children. They placed small ceremonial tokens at Sophie's feet. It was not approval. It was not rebellion. It was uncertainty. And hope. The Blade Father watched from a distance. As Marcus and Sophie boarded the transport shuttle, the Blade Father spoke one final time. You fight like a Velkari. Marcus shook his head. No. I fight like a human. The shuttle doors closed. And for the first time, Velka Prime wondered whether humanity was not weak, but dangerously strong. The attack on Velka Prime did not end when Marcus and Sophie left. It grew. Across Velkari space, debates exploded. Some called the human weak. Some called him dangerous. Some called him a corrupter of tradition. But something else was happening. Velkari children were asking questions. Why is she nameless if she has a name? Why is she guilty if she did nothing? Why does a human protect her more than we do? Questions were more dangerous than weapons. And the High Council knew it. 1 year later, Sophie Chen was no longer the frightened child from the crash. She was taller now. Stronger. Her scales shimmered deep emerald under Earth sunlight. Her 4 eyes missed nothing. She spoke both Standard and Velkari fluently. She studied human law with Marcus in the evenings. And she watched the stars often. Marcus found her one night on the rooftop of their building. You're thinking hard, he said. I am, she answered. That's usually dangerous. She gave him a small smile. They're fighting again. Marcus didn't ask who. He knew. Velkari factions had split into 2 movements. The Pure Flame, traditionalists who believed blood defined worth. And the New Circle, younger Velkari who believed honor came from choice. Sophie had become their symbol. Without trying. I don't want them to fight because of me, she said quietly. They aren't fighting because of you, Marcus replied. They're fighting because change scares them. She turned to him. Humans change easily. Marcus laughed softly. No. We fight about it constantly. Then how do you survive? He looked at the stars. We argue. We struggle. But eventually, we choose to move forward. Sophie was silent for a long moment. I want to go back. Marcus stiffened. To Velka Prime. The crisis. Before Marcus could answer her request, disaster struck. A massive solar flare erupted near Velka Prime's primary star. Velkari technology relied heavily on orbital defense grids and plasma shields, systems vulnerable to solar radiation bursts. Within hours, news spread across the galaxy. Shield failures. Power grid collapse. Orbital platforms destabilizing. Velka Prime was in danger. Millions at risk. The Pure Flame demanded isolation. No human assistance. Velkari solve Velkari problems. But their systems were failing too fast. The Earth Council offered aid. Marcus received a direct transmission. Velka Prime was requesting emergency technical advisors. Human ones. Because Earth engineers had experience surviving unstable solar activity. Marcus stared at the message. Sophie was already watching him. "We can help," she said. "It's dangerous." "It was dangerous when you saved me." He closed his eyes briefly. "You're not a child anymore, are you?" She shook her head. "No, I'm both." Return to Velka Prime. This time, they did not arrive as defendants. They arrived as part of a rescue fleet. Human ships deployed stabilizing satellites designed for extreme solar storms, portable magnetic field generators, emergency cooling systems. But integration wasn't simple. Velkari infrastructure was biologically interfaced. Organic circuits grown, not built. Human engineers couldn't sync systems fast enough. The High Adjudicator stood before Marcus again, exhaustion in her eyes. "Your methods are incompatible. We need access to your core grid architecture. That knowledge is restricted." Marcus didn't argue. He stepped aside. "Sophie." The room fell silent. She stepped forward. "I know both systems," she said. She did. She had grown up studying human and Velkari technology side by side. She understood the patterns, the logic, the weaknesses. "Your organic grid amplifies radiation spikes," she explained calmly. "Human grids disperse them." A Velkari engineer scoffed. "Impossible." "Not impossible," Sophie replied. "Just different." She began issuing instructions. Connect Earth stabilizers to Velkari bionodes. Redirect energy through hybrid converters. It was risky, unprecedented. It required trust. The Pure Flame representatives objected loudly. But alarms were screaming across the city. They had minutes. The High Adjudicator made a choice. Do it. The moment. The solar flare struck like a hammer of light. Orbiting platforms trembled. Atmospheric shields flickered. For one terrifying second, everything seemed to fail. Then, the hybrid grid activated. Human dispersal algorithms combined with Velkari biological resilience. Energy redirected. Shockwaves softened. Orbital platforms stabilized. The shields held. Velka Prime survived. Silence followed. Then cheers erupted across the control center. Velkari and humans staring at the screens in disbelief. The High Adjudicator slowly turned toward Sophie. "You designed this bridge." Sophie shook her head. "No. I just connected two sides." Marcus felt his chest tighten. That was humanity. Not domination. Connection. The shift. News spread faster than light. A child once declared nameless had just saved Velka Prime. Not through strength. Not through war. Through understanding both cultures. Velkari children began wearing small human-style bracelets in imitation of Sophie. Schools started teaching comparative law. The new circle grew stronger. Even members of the Pure Flame went quiet. Because honor demanded acknowledgement. The Blade Father requested a private meeting. Marcus stood protectively beside Sophie as the massive warrior approached. The Blade Father knelt. "Not fully, but enough. You have proven strength," he said to Sophie. "You fought differently," she replied. He looked at Marcus. "You raised her well." Marcus answered simply, "I loved her." The Blade Father nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is strength." The final council assembly. Months later, a new gathering filled the council chamber. But this time, it was not a trial. It was reform. The Code of Names was being amended. Children would no longer inherit punishment for parental crimes. Bloodline shame would end with the one who committed it. It was not unanimous. But it passed. And when it did, the clicking of claws against scales thundered louder than ever before. The High Adjudicator addressed the chamber. "Let history record that change came not from conquest, but from courage. Not from force, but from family." She looked at Sophie. "You were once declared nameless." Sophie stood tall. "My name is Sophie Chen. And it will be remembered." A quiet ending. Back on Earth months later, Sophie stood once again on the rooftop with Marcus. The stars looked different now. Friendlier. Do you think Mother would be proud? She asked softly. Marcus smiled gently. I think she knew exactly what you would become. Sophie leaned against him. I used to think being human meant being weak. And now? I think it means choosing to care, even when it's hard. Marcus nodded. That's about right. Below them, life continued. Humans and Velkari students studied together in exchange programs. Trade flourished again. Hybrid technology projects expanded. And somewhere on Velka Prime, a little Velkari girl with pale green scales introduced herself proudly with a name chosen by her parents, not defined by blood. The truth about humans. Velkari historians would later write. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest. They were not the most advanced. But they possessed a dangerous trait. They refused to let anyone face the universe alone. And that made them unstoppable. Marcus once believed he was nobody. A cultural attach. A bureaucrat. A man who failed to save his first daughter. But in saving one child, he helped change an empire. And Sophie Chen, once Kira, once nameless, became something more than a symbol. She became proof. That family is not defined by blood. Honor is not inherited. And humanity's greatest strength is not power. It is love that refuses to surrender.